6. Eddie told her what he could, glossing over the shootout but being truthful about everything else. When he was done, she remained perfectly still for some time, her hands clasped together on her lap. Little streamlets coursed down from the shallowing mountains, petering out some miles to the east. It was from these that Roland and Eddie had drawn their water as they hiked north. At first, Eddie had gotten it because Roland was too weak. Later, they had taken turns, always having to go a little further and search a little longer before finding a stream. They grew steadily more listless as the mountains slumped, but the water hadn't made them sick. So far. Roland had gone yesterday, and although they made today Eddie's turn, the gunslinger had gone again, shouldering the hide waterskins and walking off without a word. Eddie found this queerly discreet. He didn't want to be touched by the gesture, by anything about Roland for that matter, and found he was, a little, just the same. She listened attentively to Eddie, not speaking at all, her eyes fixed on his. At one moment Eddie would guess she was 5 years older than he, at another he would guess 15. There was one thing he didn't have to guess about. He was falling in love with her. When he had finished, she sat for a moment without saying anything. Now, not looking at him but beyond him, looking at the waves which would, at nightfall, bring the lobsters with their alien, lawyerly questions. He had been particularly careful to describe them. Better for her to be a little scared now than a lot scared when they come out to play. He supposed she wouldn't want to eat them, not after hearing what they had done to the Roland's hand and foot, not after she got a good close look at them, but eventually hunger would win over the "did a chick" and "done a jump." Her eyes were far and distant. "Odetta?" he asked after perhaps 5 minutes had gone by. She had told him her name, Odetta Holmes. He thought it was a gorgeous name. She looked back at him, startled out of her reverie. She smiled a little. She said one word. "No." He only looked at her, able to think of no suitable reply. He thought he had never understood until that moment how illimitable a simple negative could be. "I don't understand," he said finally. "What are you knowing?" "All this." Odetta swept an arm. She had, he'd noticed, very strong arms, both smooth but very strong, indicating the sea, the sky, the beach, the scruffy foothills where the gunslinger was now presumably searching for water, or maybe getting eaten alive by some new and interesting monster, something Eddie didn't really care to think about, indicating, in short, this entire world. "I understand how you feel. I had a pretty good case of the unrealities myself at first." But had he? Looking back, it seemed he had simply accepted, perhaps because he was sick, shaking himself apart in his need for junk. "You get over it." "No," she said again. "I believe one of two things has happened, no matter which one it is. I am still in Oxford, Mississippi. None of this is real." She went on. If her voice had been louder, or perhaps if he had not been falling in love, it would almost have been a lecture. As it was, it sounded more like a lyric than a lecture. "Except," he had to keep reminding himself, "bullshit's what it really is. Now you have to convince her of that, for her sake." "I may have sustained a head injury," she said. "There are notorious swingers of axe handles and billy clubs in Oxford Town." Oxford Town. That produced a faint chord of recognition far back in Eddie's mind. She said the words in a kind of rhythm that he, for some reason, associated with Henry. Henry and wet diapers. Why? What? Didn't matter now. "You're trying to tell me you think this is all some sort of dream you're having while you're unconscious?" "Or in a coma," she said. "And you needn't look at me as though you thought it was preposterous, because it isn't. Look here." She parted her hair carefully on the left, and Eddie could see she wore it to one side, not just because she liked the style. The old wound beneath the fall of her hair was scarred and ugly, not brown, but grayish-white. "I guess you've had a lot of hard luck in your life," he he said. She shrugged impatiently. "A lot of hard luck and a lot of soft living," she said. "Maybe it all balances out. I only showed you because I was in a coma for 3 weeks when I was 5. I dreamed a lot then. I can't remember what the dreams were, but I remember my mama said they knew I wasn't going to die just as long as I kept talking, and it seemed like I kept talking all the time, although she said they couldn't make out one word in a dozen. I do remember that the dreams were very vivid." She paused, looking around. "As vivid as this place seems to be. And you, Eddie." When she said his name, his arms prickled. Oh, he had it all right. He had it bad. "And him," she shivered. "He seems the most vivid of all." "We ought to. I mean, we are real, no matter what you think." She gave him a kind smile. It was utterly without belief. "How did it happen?" he asked. "That thing on your head." "It doesn't matter. I'm just making the point that was what happened once and might very well happen again." "No, but I'm curious." "I was struck by a brick. It was our first trip north. We came to the town of Elizabeth, New Jersey. We came in a Jim Crow car." "What's that?" She looked at him unbelievingly, almost scornfully. "Where have you been living, Eddie? In a bomb shelter?" "I'm from a different time," he said. "Could I ask how old you are, Odetta?" "Old enough to vote and not old enough for Social Security." "Well, I guess that puts me in my place." "But gently, I hope," she said, and smiled that radiant smile which made his arms prickle. "I'm 23, he said, "but I was born in 1964. The year you were living in when Roland took you." "That's rubbish." "No, I was living in 1987 when he took me." "Well," she said after a moment, "that certainly adds a great deal to your argument for this reality, Eddie." "The Jim Crow car, was it where black people had to stay?" "The Negroes," she said. "Calling a Negro a black is a trifle rude, don't you think?" "You'll all be calling yourself that by 1980 or so," Eddie said. "When I was a kid, calling a black kid a Negro was apt to get you in a fight. It was almost like calling him a nigger." She looked at him uncertainly for a moment, then shook her head. "Tell me more about this brick then." "My mother's younger sister was going to be married," Odetta said. "Her name was Sophia, but my mother always called her Sister Blue because it was the color she always fancied. Or at least she fancied to fancy it, was how my mother would put it. So I always called her Aunt Blue, even before I met her. It was the most lovely wedding. There was a reception afterward, and I remember all the presents." She laughed. "Presents always look so wonderful to a child, don't they, Eddie?" He smiled. "Yeah, you got that right. You never forget presents. Not what you got, or not what somebody else got." "My father had begun to make money by then, but all I knew is that we were getting ahead. That's what my mother always called it once. When I told her a little girl I played with had asked if my daddy was rich, my mother told me that that was what I supposed to say if any of my other chums ever asked me that question, that we were getting ahead. So they were able to give Aunt Blue a lovely china set, I remember." Her voice faltered. One hand rose to her temple and rubbed absently, as if a headache were beginning there. "Remember what, Odetta?" "I remember my mother gave her a for special." "What?" "I'm sorry, I got a headache. It's got my tongue tangled. I don't know why I'm bothering to tell you all this anyway." "Do you mind?" "No, I don't mind. I meant to say my mother gave her a special plate. It was white, with delicate blue tracework woven all around the rim." Odetta smiled a little. Eddie didn't think it was an entirely comfortable smile. Something about this memory disturbed her, and the way it immediately seemed to have taken precedence over the extremely strange situation she had found herself in, a situation which should be calming all or most of her attention, disturbed him. "I can see the plate as clear as I can see you now, Eddie. My mother gave it to Aunt Blue, and she cried and cried over it. I think she'd seen a plate like it once when she and my mother were children, only of course their parents could never have afforded such a thing. There was none of them who got anything for special as kids. After the reception, Aunt Blue and her husband left for the Great Smokies on their honeymoon. They went on a train. She looked at Eddie. In the Jim Crow car, he said. That's right, in the Crow car. In those days, that's what Negroes rode in, and where they ate. That's what we're trying to change in Oxford Town. She looked at him, almost surely expecting him to insist she was here, but he was caught in a webwork of his own memory again. Wet diapers and those words. Oxford Town. Only suddenly other words came. Just a single line, but he could remember Henry singing it over and over until his mother asked if he couldn't please stop so she could hear Walter Cronkite. Somebody better investigate soon. Those were the words, sung over and over by Henry in a nasal monotone. He tried for more but couldn't get it, and was that any real surprise? He couldn't have been no more than 3 at the time. Somebody better investigate soon. The words gave him a chill. Eddie, are you all right? Yes, why? You shivered. He smiled. Donald Duck must have walked over my grave. She laughed. Anyway, at least I didn't spoil the wedding. It happened when we were walking back to the railway station. We stayed the night with a friend of Aunt Blue's, and in the morning my father called a taxi. The taxi came almost right away. But when the driver saw we were colored, he drove off like his head was on fire and his ass was catching. Aunt Blue's friend had already gone ahead to the depot with our luggage. There was a lot of it, because we were going to spend a week in New York. I remember my father saying he couldn't wait to see my face lit up when the clock in Central Park struck the hour and all the animals danced. My father said we might as well walk to the station. My mother agreed just as fast as lickety split, saying that was a fine idea. It wasn't but a smile, and it would be nice to stretch our legs after 3 days on a train just behind us and half a day on another just ahead of us. My father said yes, and it was gorgeous weather besides. But I think I knew even at 5 that he was mad and she was embarrassed, and both of them were afraid to call another taxicab because the same thing might happen again. So we went walking down the street. I was on the inside because my mother was afraid of me getting too close to the traffic. I remember wondering if my daddy meant my face would actually start to glow or something when I saw that clock in Central Park, and if that might not hurt. And that was when the brick came down on my head. Everything went dark for a while. The dream started. Vivid dreams. She smiled. Like this dream, Eddie. Did the brick fall, or did someone bomb you? They never found anyone. The police, my mother told me this long after when I was 16 or so, found the place where they thought the brick had been, but there were other bricks missing, and more were loose. It was just outside the window of a 14th floor room in an apartment building that had been condemned. But of course, there were lots of people staying there just the same, especially at night. Sure, Eddie said. No one saw anyone leaving the building, so it went down as an accident. My mother said she thought it had been, but I think she was lying. She didn't even bother trying to tell me what my father thought. They were both still smarting over how the cab driver had taken one look at us and driven off. It was more than anything else that made them believe someone had been up there just looking around and saw us coming and decided to drop a brick on the niggers. Will your lobster creatures come out soon? No, Eddie said. Not until dusk, so one of your ideas is that all of this is a coma dream, like the ones you had when you got bumped by the brick. Only this time you think it was a billy club or something. Yes. What's the other one? Odetta's face and voice were calm enough, but her head was filled with an ugly skein of images which all added up to Oxford Town, Oxford Town. How did the song go? 2 men killed by the light of the moon, somebody better investigate soon? Not quite right, but it was close. Close. I may have gone insane, she said. 7. The first words which came into Eddie's mind were, "If you think you've gone insane, Odetta, you're nuts." Brief consideration, however, made this seem an unprofitable line of argument to take. Instead, he remained silent for a time, sitting by her wheelchair, his knees drawn up, his hands holding her wrists. "Were you really a heroin addict?" He said. "It's like being an alcoholic, or basing. It's not a thing you can get over. I used to hear that and go, yeah, right, in my head, you know? But now I understand. I still want it, and I guess part of me will always want it. But the physical part has passed." "What's basing?" she asked. "Something that hasn't been invented yet in your Wen. It's something you do with cocaine, only it's like turning TNT into an A-bomb." "You did it?" "Christ no, heroin was my thing, I told you." "You don't seem like an addict," she said. Eddie actually was fairly spiffy. That was, one ignored the gammy smell arising from his body and clothes. He would rinse himself and did, could rinse his clothes and did, but lacking soap, he could not really wash either. His hair had been short when Roland stepped into his life, the better to sail through customs, my dear, and what a great big joke that had turned out to be, and was still a respectable length. He shaved every morning, using the keen edge of Roland's knife, gingerly at first, but with increasing confidence. He'd been too young for shaving to be part of his life when Henry left for Nam, and it hadn't been any big deal to Henry back then either. He never grew a beard, but sometimes went 3 or 4 days before Mom nagged him into mowing the stubble. When he came back, however, Henry was a maniac on the subject, as he was on a few others: foot powder after showering, teeth to be brushed 3 or 4 times a day, and followed by a chaser of mouthwash, clothes away hung up. And he turned Eddie into a fanatic as well. The stubble was moved every morning in and every evening. Now this habit was deep in his brain, like the others Henry had taught him, including, of course, the one you took care with, a needle. "Too clean cut?" he asked her, grinning. "Too white," she said shortly, and then was quiet for a moment, looking sternly out to the sea. Eddie was quiet too. If there was a comeback to something like that, he did not know what it was. "I'm sorry," she said. "That was very unkind, very unfair, and very unlike me." "It's all right." "It's not. It's like a white person saying something like, 'Geez, I never would have guessed you were a nigger,' to someone with light skin." "You like to think of yourself as more fair-minded," Eddie said. "What we like to think of ourselves and what we really are rarely have much in common, I should think, but yes, I'd like to think of myself as more fair-minded, so please accept my apology, Eddie." "On one condition." "What's that?" She was smiling a little again. That was good. He liked it when he was able to make her smile. "Give this a fair chance. That's the condition." "Give what a fair chance?" She sounded slightly amused. Eddie might have bristled at that tone, and someone else's voice might have felt he was getting bone, but with her it was different. With her it was all right. He supposed with her just about anything would have been. "That there's a third alternative. That this really is happening. I mean," Eddie cleared his throat, "I'm not very good at this philosophical shit. Or, metamorphosis, or whatever the hell you call it." "Do you mean metaphysics?" "Maybe, I don't know. I think so. But I know you can't go around disbelieving what your senses tell you. Why, if your idea about this all being a dream is right, I didn't say a dream." "Whatever you said, that's what it comes down to, isn't it? A false reality?" If there had been something faintly condescending in her voice a moment ago, it was gone now. "Philosophy and metaphysics may not be your bag, Eddie, but you must have been one hell of a debater in school." "I was never in a debate. That was for gays and hags and wimps, like chess club." "What do you mean, my bag? What's a bag?" "Just something you like." "What do you mean, gays?" "What are gays?" He looked at her for a moment, then shrugged. Homos, fags, never mind. We could swap slang all day. It's not getting us anyplace. What I'm trying to say is that if it's all a dream, it could be mine, not yours. You could be a figment of my imagination. Her smile faltered. You. Nobody bopped you. Nobody bopped you either. Now her smile was entirely gone. No one that I remember, she corrected with sharpness. Me either, he said. You told me that you're in Oxford. Well, those custom guys weren't exactly cheery joy when they couldn't find the dope they were after. One of them could have head-bopped me with the butt of his gun. It could be lying in a Bellevue ward right now dreaming of you and Roland while they were writing their reports, explaining how, while they were interrogating me, I became violent and had to be subdued. It's not the same. Why? Because you're this intelligent, socially active black lady with no legs and I'm just a hype from Co-op City? He said it with a grin, meaning it as an amiable jape, but she flared at him. I wish you would stop calling me black. He sighed. Okay, but it's gonna take some getting used to. You should have been on the debate club anyway. Fuck, he said, and the turn of her eyes made him realize again the difference between them was much wider than color. They were speaking to each other from separate islands. The water between was time. Never mind. The word had gotten her attention. I don't want to debate with you. I want to wake you up to the fact that you are awake, that's all. I might be able to at least operate provisionally according to the dictates of your third alternative as long as this situation continue to go on, except for one thing. There's a fundamental difference between what happened to you and what happened to me. So fundamental, so large, that you haven't seen it. Then show it to me. There is no discontinuity in your consciousness. There is a very large one in mine. I don't understand. I mean, you can account for all of your time, Odetta said. Your story follows from point to point. The airplane, the incursion by by him. She nodded towards the foothills with clear distaste. The stashing of the drugs, the officers that took you into custody, all the rest. It's a fantastic story. It has no missing links. As for myself, I arrived back from Oxford, was met by Andrew, my driver, and brought back to my building. I bathed and I wanted to sleep. I was getting a very bad headache, and sleep is the only medicine that's any good for the really bad ones. But it was close on at midnight, and I thought I would watch the news first. Some of us had been released, but a good many were still in the jug, and when we left, I wanted to find out if their cases had been resolved. I dried off and put on my robe. I went to the living room. I turned on the TV news. The newscaster started talking about the speech Khrushchev had just made about the American advisor in Vietnam. He said, "We have a film report for you," and then he was gone, and I was rolling down this beach. You say you saw me in some sort of magic doorway, which is now gone, and I was in Macy's, and I was stealing. All of this is preposterous enough. Even it was so, I could find something better to steal than costume jewelry. I don't wear jewelry. You better take a look at your hands again, Odetta, Eddie said quietly. For a very long time she looked from the diamond on her left pinky to the large and vulgar to be anything but paste, to the large opal on the third finger of her right hand, which was too large and too vulgar to be anything but real. None of this is happening, she repeated firmly. You sound like a broken record. He was genuinely angry for the first time. Every time someone pokes a hole in your neat little story, you just retreat to that. None of this is happening shit. You have to wise up, Detta. Don't call me that! I hate that! She burst out so shrilly that Eddie recoiled. Sorry. Jesus, I didn't know. I went from night to day, from undressed to dressed, from my living room to this deserted beach, and what really happened was that some big-bellied redneck deputy hit me upside the head with a club, and that is all. But your memories don't stop in Oxford, he said softly. What? Uncertainty again. or maybe seeing and not wanting to, like with the rings. If you got whacked in Oxford, how come your memories don't stop there? There isn't always a lot of logic to these things. She was rubbing her temples again. And now, if it's all the same to you, Eddie, I'd just as soon end the conversation. My headache is back. It's quite bad. I guess whether or not logic figures it all depends on what you want to believe. I saw you in Macy's, Odetta. I saw you stealing. You say you don't do things like that, but you also told me you don't wear jewelry. You told me that even if you'd looked down at your hand several times while we were talking, those rings were then there, but it was as if you couldn't see them until I called your attention to them and made you see them. I don't want to talk about it, she shouted. My head hurts. All right, but you know where you lost track of time, and it wasn't in Oxford. Leave me alone, she said dully. Eddie saw the gunslinger toiling his way back with 2 full water skins, one tied around his waist and the other slung over his shoulders. He looked very tired. I wish I could help you, Eddie said. But to do that, I guess I'd have to be real. He stood by her for a moment, but her head was bowed, the tips of her fingers steadily massaging her temples. Eddie went to meet Roland. Thank you all for sitting down with another part of Majin reading Drawing of the Three. And we were just witnesses to a conversation between Eddie and Odetta Holmes. And it is clear that now Detta Walker might soon make an appearance. There is one slight problem that I didn't read, or maybe I just don't realize it right now. When did Odetta remember her name? Maybe she had some sort of ID on her. Maybe. But in the end, I suppose it's a small plot hole that doesn't matter. What matters is that soon the Gunslinger and Eddie Dean will meet face to face with Detta Walker. And my voice is trembling to do her again. With that being said, long days and pleasant nights to you, listener.